Hello, welcome to the Meher Baba program. My name is Billy Goodrum, and today our special guest is Adele Wolkin. Welcome, Adele. We're so glad to have you here. And today we want to talk about your experiences meeting Avatar Meher Baba back in the 50s, 1952 specifically. Today is May 10th, which happens to be the day that you first met Meher Baba in Myrtle Beach, South Carolina. And we'd love to hear your memories of that and what the experience was like for you.
Oh, yes. Well, I feel very, very most happy and joyful always to be able to share an experience with Meher Baba, whom I accept, of course, as God in human form. And knowing that whatever he does has significance that touches all the other souls that he has created. In 1952, on May the 10th, I had the final culmination of having waited well over 9 years to meet him in physical form. I had inwardly, consciously felt his influence very profoundly through the good connections I had with close women disciples in particular.
You had been living with some of those disciples in New York City, hadn't you?
Yes. Yes, I had heard in the course of my search, which was to find some answers to a very tumultuous period in world history, namely World War II, I had sought, as Westerners can seek, through available universities and visiting different outstanding teachers on spiritual subjects, and I had met a very at this time in my life met with Phyllis Frederick, who became my very dearest friend, and in a certain real sense, guide in this spiritual search for learning what could bring about a situation like the World War II, which was especially something I could not resolve with the love of God that I had. I did have tremendous emphasis in my life on the teachings of the higher teachers at the time, namely Jesus Christ, and also I had a great regard for inspired souls that came through the world of English literature and the lives of the saints.
Yeah, you had been on quite a search. Now, you came to live with these women who were disciples of Meher Baba in New York, and that was Princess Narina Machabeli, Countess Nadine Tolstoy, and Elizabeth Patterson.
Right.
And they were in the process of preparing for Meher Baba to come to the United States.
Right.
And he did finally come in 1952, and that is...
that's true.
That's the first time, and that had been a 9-year period since you first heard of
exactly.
Meher Baba before you actually met him.
Yes.
And you went to Myrtle Beach with these women?
Yes. No. Actually, we knew when Baba was going to arrive, my very dear friend Phyllis and myself, and we also had an invitation to come there at a specific time. We did not travel with them when they actually left. It was, I met him May the 10th, but they had traveled to Myrtle Beach many days before that.
I see.
It was interesting that you named the titles of these women, Billy, because I myself came from just a middle-class family, and I was not impressed by titles. I don't think any real seeker is impressed by the worldly titles, and I will say I wasn't either, but I was very, very much impressed by the quality of their lives, and that was something to be impressed with, because their integrity and their devotion and love of God was overwhelming.
Just complete, wasn't it? Complete devotion. And they had been living with Meher Baba in India before.
They had. They both had. All three of them had been living as in the ashrams that he would establish, and they also were given the mission, and they had the perfect harmony with the whole concept, because themselves they were souls that wanted to serve God, and in serving God he showed them how, and he wanted to establish a center where people of every kind could come. As he said, I'm equally approachable to one and all, big and small, to saints who rise and sinners who fall, and through the various paths that give the divine call. So therefore, Baba had made no distinction between caste, creed, color, and nothing of that nature. In fact, his influence in India has been recognized worldwide, and he was sought by Mahatma Gandhi, of course, and he broke down as much as he could, as much as the caste system and all these divisions.
Now, you had been living with these women, and you came to, when did you first glimpse Meher? When did you first see Meher Baba in his human form?
Well,
you've known about him for 9 years, but what was your first experience like when you saw him, or did you?
I think in a previous program we did describe the center a little bit, did we? The fact that this was such a unique and magnificent place that was finally settled and established by these women disciples, and that's the Meher Spiritual Center at Myrtle Beach. Exactly. And so that's where we went on May the 10th, and we waited our time. There were just a select few at that time, because the center is open to one and all. But at that time, it was just being initiated, so that it was only until Baba's second visit that it was really open entirely. In the meantime, we were very fortunate to be among the few that were invited this time, and we came to the lagoon. It was just one of the cabins, and Baba was seated there, and as I entered, I just had such... I was brought in by one of the disciples. Were you nervous? Well, I was, yes, but had been far more nervous had I not had this preparation of 8+ years, close to 9 years, and it was amazing, though, how at the same time with all the uniqueness of the situation, knowing that I was meeting one who I really in my heart accepted as the Christ, the Avatar, God in human form, it was so familiar, the feeling that he was there, that this was someone I knew, someone that knew me better than I knew myself. It is a remarkable familiarity that one feels with the one who is is the very essence of our very being, closer than our very breath. And so I saw him as I saw those I loved most dearly, namely my mother and father.
When you first looked at him,
when I first looked at him, he seemed to have the eyes of my mother, and he seemed to have the aspect of a paternal, wonderful, totally compassionate father, which is what his name is, Meher Baba, compassionate one. And the compassion is such that you feel at ease regardless of how much you feel unworthy, and I did. I felt most unworthy, but in his presence, you are just yourself. You don't take time to, as he said, my whole work is so that you are not always involved with yourself, but that you want to grow and be what is your true heritage, which is ultimately the aim and goal of the Christ, the Avatar, is to make everyone realize God. And he gives you that not through so many words, but he gives you that inwardly as a conviction that you, as he says, just have no worry and be happy in your love of God, do your best, and when you follow that order, you pretty much have the guide how to serve in this world, to serve one another.
Now, so you walked into the cabin. You're there at Myrtle Beach, and you walked into the cabin.
Exactly.
And what was it did you do first? I mean, this is God in human form.
Yes.
The Avatar,
right,
who people all over the world and all over India would go to take his darshan, which is to take his blessing. Did you bow down to him? Did you embrace him? Did he say, have a seat? What was the first thing that happened there?
Very good question. I just love to bring that very image to my consciousness as much as possible. It's just the anticipation of having waited so long and followed his orders during that time as well. I keep, in my archives, I keep a record of all those marvelous correspondence that preceded all of this. So he did say, I have heard very much about you, I have read your letters, I have known, and finally we are able to come together. And I just was not in a mood to ask any questions, because when you're with one who truly radiates the love and compassion that only he can radiate, you don't want to talk. You just want to be in that bliss forever. And so it was capturing a little bit of that kind of bliss where that which is real is given and received in silence. And be still and know that I am God. So that just capturing those moments puts me in that awareness that that's how I should be a lot more. I really need to be relieved from my other self, and by just bringing that in front of my consciousness.
That image of your first meeting there?
Yes, that's exactly. It's just a total security, total acceptance of one's own self, and without any kind of false faces about it.
Well, I think everyone yearns for a moment like that in their life, and I think you're very fortunate to have had that moment when it felt that way to you, that
exactly,
that you felt completely at ease with life in the world.
Right. Well, soon after that, after the embraces, and Baba
He embraced you when you walked in. First thing, did he embrace you?
Yes. Now, he was sitting on what's like the chaise lounge, and he seemed to be just anticipating the coming with very, very much warm-heartedness, very much like, as I say, you're a parent if you'd been away a while and you're coming home, so they anticipate with much welcome and acceptance. And to be accepted that way, I'm not sure my parents ever accepted me that way. Yeah. It was much more, because it was really who I had been very carefully preparing to meet by having been drawn so strongly to him through not only his disciples, but all the messages and all that I had read about him. There were the major books were out even then. One major book that was out was the Discourses. And of course, as a student previously, and having that direction of really reading things meditatively and with concentration, I had really appreciated so much from that standpoint. Although the real draw with Baba, when I went to learn about him through the discourse, it was through the heart. Because the mind had become a little saturated with other studies, and I just felt what this has done is given me an insight into into life, and into, as I say, the concern I had about World War II and the role of God. All of these would just and they were expanding within, because you come in touch with this very center of life itself, the very that gives a charge. It gives it gives a person the kind of strength and actual acceleration that, of course, is why the avatar descends every 700 to 1400 years to begin with, when the wick of righteousness is burning low. And of course, this wick of righteousness is burning low within the individual, as well as in the macrocosm of society as well. So one feels the difference. The purity is what I noticed so much about Baba. I felt when I touched him and embraced him, I really didn't feel it was palpable in this physical way. It was more ethereal. What can you say? I mean, you just didn't feel the slightest kind of insinuation that this was anything but the purest of the pure. And that remained with me very strongly. And because it establishes a gauge, a standard of what real purity and real relationship must be. And I saw that so beautifully when I saw Baba near his women disciples from the East in particular, and their connection was so pure. It was just something I had not known from my parents at all. That is, the relationship between my parents could never be duplicated as the relationship between Meher Baba and his chief woman disciple Mehera, for example. That in itself was so very beautiful.
Well, I wanted to get back to this first meeting again in this cabin, and he embraced you. What did the conversation that took place? What was that? What did you have a discussion with him? with
Yes.
Baba?
Well, he did. Of course, Baba is silent, so the discussion was through the alphabet board, if any. But actually,
Was there someone there to read the alphabet board?
yes, disciple, of course. MeherBabaLibrary was the name of the disciple, and that conversation is recorded in the Glow magazine, and it was recorded in another journal called The Awakener.
I see. Did you have any specific questions for Baba, or just no questions?
I don't remember that I did, other than the one, yes, how I could serve him. And he did say that, that just the best service is just to love God. That is the greatest service of all, and that would lead one on to really the answers. Mm-hmm.
Just to love God.
It wasn't, excuse me, this, may I just comment on the picture?
Yes, please.
This is at the Myrtle Beach Meher Center. Mm-hmm. And Baba, of course, this is a day when he was celebrating the occasion of Elizabeth Patterson's birthday. She was the founder of Myrtle Beach, a very outstanding disciple, and Baba is now walking toward this is the central meeting place, was the barn. And of course, he always recognized children immediately and is showing his great awareness of these young ones who came to meet him in I believe that was 1956.
And that,
of course, is in attendance at the barn, and he is giving us. We usually started out with the prayer to the Master's Prayer, and then the prayer of repentance, which is a very beautiful prayer, and then just some plan for the day. A program was laid out for the day, and Baba is now walking with one of the very close disciples outside of the barn, and of course I would always feel very strongly the presence of his love, no matter what he did. That love and the inner guidance one gets, how to serve him. You're always asking the inner question, what can I do? What can I do for him? And of course, he would in life itself tell us what to do. For example, when I lived with his women, I did not have the vocation that I was able to enter. Namely, he allowed me to care for a couple of the disciples who were not well. And in caring for them in this amateurish way, I found one of my vocations, which I had not chosen previously, but it was it's just such a very integral part of what he tries to do, which is have you, as it says, real happiness lies in making others happy. So what type of service can you choose that will somehow allow you to fulfill your own capacities and in the process be serving and forgetting your own self and thinking of others? Well, in my case, Baba seemed to design for me something I'd never designed for myself, namely nursing. But intuitively, since he is bringing about a much more intuitive age, as one of the works of the current avatar, to bring about the transition from reason to intuition, that in my intuition I saw that, yes, what a wonderful thing it is to serve as a nurse. And thus I did become a nurse.
When you met Baba, did you have any discussion with him about that? I guess were you a student at that time, or
yes,
at Columbia?
That's true. In 1952, I entered nursing actually in 1954. So for those subsequent years, I still was I was involved with other things.
Mm-hmm. And did Baba give you any directive regarding that?
Well, actually, there was one occasion that I had left suspended a thesis, you might say, that I was working on in this department at Columbia University, and it was comparative religion philosophy. I had also taken some work at Union Theological Seminary, so I wondered if I should conclude that, or perhaps go on to something else.
And what did Baba comment on?
And then Baba said, well, he, knowing this inwardly and spiritually, what was a lingering thought, he thought, well, he could see probably that I wanted to really go ahead and try to finish what I started, and I'd be less apt to be having afterthoughts that I should have done that. He said, try to finish your thesis. And I did try, and it was really very difficult, because I wanted to make the thesis on a study of Meher Baba's writings, and that wasn't at that time very acceptable. They'd rather I did something classical like St. Augustine or something.
Certainly, yeah.
And so that fell through, and and since it did fall through, I didn't know how to reconcile that when I met Baba, and he asked me if I had finished it, and I said no. He said, that's fine. I am your thesis.
Wonderful.
I am your master's thesis.
Well, I'll tell you, Adele, our time's about run out here. We have just a few more seconds. Is there anything else you wanted to say as we close the program?
Yes, well, I just think the design of the avatar for each life is so established that there is no cause, as he says time and again, do your best and don't worry, be happy. And I found out that's really very true, that he, as the awakener, of course, comes not to teach but to awaken. And so I had no regrets about leaving all of my intellectual studies and trying to develop inwardly, because that is really what his whole sacrificial life is that we go within, and there is no separation ever. There's a God resides in every heart, and he said, the book I want you to read, if you're a book reader, is the book of the heart, and know that God lives there.
Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Adele, for those beautiful comments, and thank you so much for coming to the program today. This is the Meher Baba program.